Welcome back to another episode of the Social Media CX podcast. Today's guest is someone who gets the balance between brand trust and bold moves. It's my friend and, full disclosure, yes, one of our clients, Jill Sammons, who's the VP of Marketing and Brand at BCU. Under her leadership, BCU is not just posting pretty content, they're actually responding to their members, resolving their members' issues, retaining members through social care, and the results are pretty darn good. Let's just say if you're a CMO listening in, you will want to take notes. Welcome to the Social Media CX podcast, where social media meets customer experience and where all fires, no rainbows is the current reality for most brands. I'm Brooke Sellas, CEO of B Squared Media, and I am on a mission to change that. Social media can be the MVP of your CX strategy, and I'm here to show you how. Each week, we'll tackle the challenges of social care head-on with candid interviews, real-world case studies, and actionable advice to turn your social channels into loyalty-building, revenue-driving dopamine machines. Whether you're managing customer complaints, trying to engage meaningfully, or just tired of missing DMs, this podcast is your guide to putting out the fires and building the rainbows. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate being here, Brooke, and appreciate that really nice introduction. I don't think I've been introduced that kindly before, so thank you. I would really like to remember that one.
I'll send it to you, but
Thank
we've
you.
been working together for a long time now,
We have.
and I think, align on so many things. And I think one of the things that makes you so special, which therefore makes BCU so special and makes the team so special, is that, when we hear finance brands, like when I think of my bank, I won't name names, but
Hmm.
I'm not thinking of someone who really cares about me as a member or wants to have a conversation with me as a member. How does that happen internally? Because I know you and I talked about this in the past. That doesn't happen overnight. How did BCU collectively decide, like, hey, we're going to show up for our members in a way that literally most financial institutions won't or don't?
Well, I think we have to think first about the industry that we're in. Financial services is a commoditized industry. So you're right. Banking in general is not an industry that you associate with caring about people. You think stodgy, you think stockholders, you think, someone sitting on a pile of cash, and that pile of cash is probably not yours. It
Mm-hmm.
belongs to someone else. But credit unions, although also financial services, credit unions are cooperatives. And the cooperative nature of credit unions is people helping people. So, way back when credit unions first began, it was all centered around one person has money to deposit, another person has a need to borrow, and these two people come together and they help one another. And with the intent and purpose of the person who's borrowing, will pay that money back to the person who has some money to deposit with a little bit of interest paid. But there's no
Mm-hmm.
profit to be made, and they're just helping one another. And that's what became the credit union industry. So, really, it's financial services, but the spirit of helping people. BCU is that on steroids. And so the leadership of BCU combined with us partnering with companies, our business model is to be a credit union for Fortune 100 companies primarily who really care about the well being of their workforce. So you take the employers who really care about their people and us as a credit union who really care about their members. And that's now the formula of providing banking services in a way that we can care about people.
That sounds so key. Like, hey, we want to care about people, so therefore we know we have to work with people who
Mhm,
also
mhm,
want to care about people.
mhm.
That's a note to all by that could be an episode all by
Yes,
itself.
it could.
so So you're leading both brand and member experience. What do you see in, as long as you've been doing this, the biggest shift in how BCU thinks about connection over communication?
Well, one point of clarification, I would say, yes, I lead brand. There's another team that leads member experience, but I would say member experience is really ownership across the whole organization.
Yeah.
Starting with our CEO. Our CEO keeps member experience top of mind, and it is a primary key performance indicator for the whole company. So making connection and not just communicating, it's got to be a two-way. So it's really about listening to understand and not to react. Whether it's a live conversation, whether you're coming into a branch,
Hmm.
you're calling into our call center, whether we're marketing to someone, even if it's a marketing piece, the call to action, I want to prompt a two-way interaction, not just a one-way, because we cannot possibly connect with one another if we're not encouraging something that's two-way. So I want to know about you. I want to know. I don't want to just solve your problem and assume what we're trying to solve for with a financial product or service. I want to know about you. I want to know about your life. I want to know what life event you're experiencing, because whatever that life event, big or small, is that you're experiencing, you probably have some kind of a financial need to help solve it.
Mm.
And there's lots of different ways that we can solve that. Again, big or small. And some
Yes.
some need people's help to do that. Some you could do digitally, no doubt.
Sure.
But along the way, a human definitely helps with that.
For sure. We've talked about this too, and I know this was like something many, many years ago. You were working on changing the mindset, but how did this happen? Why did this happen? How did you start to convince leadership to see social
Mhm.
as a frontline touch point for your members? How did that come to be?
Oh, Brooke, well, you know this. It wasn't, it was a long journey. Such a long journey. And looking back, I understand why it took leadership a while. For a lot of people, for many years, social media, I understand, was a place where people would go just to view content,
Hmm.
and didn't necessarily see where dialogue would take place, conversation would take place. Whether I'm sitting in a meeting, whether I'm at home on the couch, if I'm going to be looking at social media, I know it's the most trite saying in the world, meet people where they are, but truly meet them where they are, find them where they are. We're doing banking, we're managing money every day. We're on social media every day. That was what I was trying to say to, and not just me, but others in the organization.
Sure.
Trying to say to leadership, we're trying to connect the dots here. People are dealing with money every day, and they're on social media every day. So wouldn't it make sense that we would bring those two things together and let them see BCU in the places where they want to be spending their time.
Yeah.
And and so that was hard for them to wrap their brain. I think it didn't feel professional enough. It didn't
Hmm.
feel, it's called social media for a reason. That's, where you're just chit-chatting with your friends, or you're looking at crazy things you did last weekend or something. But then the next phase of that became, oh, if we do start to get busy on social media and we're putting things out there, and we do begin to encourage dialogue, we've got to be ready to take care of that. And we have to do a
Hmm.
really good job of that. And that was something we were not good at for a while. We couldn't manage those conversations. We weren't good at the care. So we backed off, really having a strategic way of delivering content, because if we couldn't put it out there if we weren't prepared to have the conversation.
Yeah. You bring up such a great point because I feel like this happens to a lot of businesses. It doesn't matter really what industry they're in. We see this all the time with clients who we end up talking to, whether they become a client or not. But there's that fear of going out there, right? Big brands are risk averse. They get nervous about opening themselves up to that risk that could happen on social. But then to your point too, once they even kind of get the confidence and the education that it takes to say, you know what, yes, we should do this and we are going to do this, there's a big gap there because your employees work typically Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and social media happens 24/7. And the crises, by the way,
Yeah.
always love to happen after hours, on the weekends, and definitely on a holiday.
Yep. Yep.
So that's a big, I love that you're bringing up these points because I know if you're listening and you're at a brand, you're probably nodding in agreement with what Jill's saying because these are very common things that we hear.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. In fact, something that sticks with me, especially coming into the summer season, it was probably one of the first years that leadership was like, okay, go ahead, try this out. And 4th of July, I was about to leave my house. My kids were much younger at the time, had a house full of company, we're at the lake and we're going to the fireworks. And, you know, fireworks being a double entendre, I guess, because sure enough, there's this really angry person who decides to go onto our social post, our fun little happy 4th of July social post. And she was having a problem. I needed to solve that problem for BCU because we didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a social care team at the time. And it was me. Long story short, my family watched the fireworks and I missed the fireworks because I was in the car in the parking
Huh.
lot trying to help find someone else at BCU because I couldn't solve her problem on my own. I needed other
Sure.
people. So now it wasn't just my fireworks show that got interrupted. I had to interrupt other people at BCU as well. And you're right, it doesn't stop. And look, here we are, 10 years later, and I still remember that one incident and, that interruption of a holiday of mine. But yet that person was really going through something tough.
Yeah.
And in the end, though, we were there to help her. And I'm really proud of the fact that we were there and she was able to get the help that she needed at a time when I don't think many other brands would have been there to do that.
Definitely not. No. I love that story too. And that it happened so long ago and you still remember it because I think it almost has to happen to you
Hmm.
to understand, right? It feels risky not to do it, but then if you look at a situation like that and you see the risk there, one of the biggest things we see through social care, which Jill, is churn moments.
Hmm.
Moments when that customer is ready to churn. And if you don't show up, care, solve that problem, and do it quickly, they will churn. And, we always talk about sales, 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 new, 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 but we also all know that retaining clients is so important. And now they're
Hmm.
more likely to go to social to complain and create those
Sure.
churn moments. So you have to be able to meet them there. So I love that. I think once a fireworks situation happens to you, it's kind of the perfect name for it too, because that's what it is. You really did see fireworks, just of a different kind.
Yes, yes, I did.
Once you have your fireworks moment, it's kind of like, oh boy, now I see it's not the risk of joining in, it's the risk of not being there and
Yep,
meeting them where they are, just like you said.
yep.
One of the other things I love about BCU is that y'all really make it a point to listen on social. And I just want to talk about that a little bit. Let's just start with once BCU started listening, really coming in and you got the approval, y'all went in and started listening to your members on social media. What did you start to learn? What did that open up for you as you
Hmm.
started to listen to those member conversations through social media?
I think one of the first things that I recall was that the importance of authenticity. So listening was one thing, but also understanding that the responses needed to be very relevant to whatever it was you were listening to. You couldn't have a set of responses that you could pick and choose. Okay, here's one of four responses that we're going to use for, these circumstances and call it listening. You really have to listen to understand and read between the lines a little bit, because you still have to remember that this is social. So people are going to truncate things, they're going to use slang, they're going to, there probably is more to the story than what
Yeah.
you're hearing or seeing in their few words that they might be using in a comment or a post. Also say that one of the things that I heard by listening was that if you sense a really strong tone in someone, immediately look to your other channels, because that person likely didn't just post there,
Mm-hmm.
probably gone elsewhere too, but also that there's a lot of good too. I went into it thinking we're going to start listening, and we're going to be listening for the angry people, the frustrated people, but I was pleasantly surprised that we were listening for the compliments too, and we were listening for ways that we should go back inside the organization and emphasize and recognize the good that's happening in the organization and amplify that and make sure that
Yes.
we are, we're encouraging more of that to happen. And one last thing I'll
Yes.
say is what we heard by doing more listening was how quick a lot of our other members are to jump to our defense before we even get there, which I
Yes.
love. So,
Yes. Well, I mean, that's a sign of a good brand, right? That's when you know you're doing it right, because nowadays the brand is what the customer says it is. So when you have members jumping in and defending you, that's telling the world, because social is a spectator sport.
yeah,
This is actually a good brand. Hey, leave my brand alone. They're actually
yeah.
good. I love that so much. I love the point that you highlighted too. Like, we have an inside story or an inside joke at BCU about Nick, right?
Mhm, mhm,
They found a lot in their conversations. There was this person named Nick who was always the first to comment, the first to share stories, to share his wins about what he was able to do through being a member of BCU. And I remember as we were going through the Care Squared training, Nick kept getting brought up. And so it became this thing that we still say
mhm,
to this day, like, find your Nicks. And to you, audience, that just means that part of listening is finding those advocates, as Jill said,
mhm,
looking at the positive, right? A lot of times we want to jump to the negative, and I absolutely agree with that. We've got to fix what we can as fast as we can, but don't leave out the positive, because that's where your user generated content is. That's where your advocates are. So, like, find your nicks, those people who are constantly the first to comment, sharing stories,
yeah,
sharing your posts, right? Your advocates, or your nicks, as we call them at BCU, are so important to identify and label, and
mhm,
then potentially work with in the future, whether it's creating a community or creating an advocate or an influencer program. These are the people who you want to make sure that you're talking back to when they're
yeah.
talking good about you, right?
Yeah. One of the fun things that I'm so glad that we did was we started Surprise and Delight. So
Yes.
just,
Talk about
so,
that a little bit.
so
Talk
super
about
excited.
that.
It just started with wanting to be thankful for people.
Mhm.
So, to people like Nick, and, wanting to let them know we really appreciate you. And so if we had a cool swag item or something like that, find out, we went on a little investigative hunt, because, on social, a lot of people, their profile name is not who they really
Miss Kitty
are.
one, two,
Right.
three. Yeah.
So it sometimes takes a bit to figure out who the person is. But once we did find out who they are, then just surprise them with something from BCU. And then wow, then you get a note back saying how cool that was. And then that just feels really, really, really good. And so
Yes.
we turned it into kind of a program that now we do, and we call it Surprise and Delight. And we'll just randomly choose people to send something to. And it's a lot of fun.
How have you seen the success of that work? Like, obviously the team feels good, right?
Hmm.
Which is a
Hmm.
huge win. I think a lot of people don't think about surprise and delight actually making the team members feel good, but there's
Yeah.
that kind of like residual effect on the team who's performing the surprise and delight. But what have you seen just from like, I don't know, member satisfaction or people who have been involved in the surprise and delight program? What have they said, or what are some of the sentiments around it?
Well, I wish I could say that there's hard data behind it. Unfortunately, I don't have hard data, but certainly anecdotally, there's people who have come into a branch, wearing the hat they got or something like
Uh,
that and raving about it. Then there's other people who have actually posted on their own social tagging BCU, a picture of themselves with, holding
mhm.
the handwritten note that we sent them and, encouraging people, y'all should join the credit union kind of thing, and I say y'all
Yeah.
purposefully because, maybe it's somebody from one of our southern states or something like that. It's just been fun.
Yeah, user-generated content cannot be understated. And I think, yes, that is one of the outcomes of a surprise and delight program like yours. You're creating user-generated content, whether it happens in real life or on digital channels. But either way, that itself has its own benefits because once again, it's the customer saying that the brand is amazing versus the
Mhm.
brand having to say, we're amazing. Hey, hey, quick sidebar before we dive back in. If you loved the CX convo here on the Social Media CX podcast, then you'll definitely want to check out a book that totally changed the game for me. It's my book, and it's called Conversations That Connect. And y'all, this isn't your typical engagement metrics matter fluff. It's all about social led listening and how the most impactful brands are using real conversations, not just content calendars, to build trust, spark loyalty, and drive revenue. So, if you've ever found yourself asking, what do we say when we show up on social? This book is your answer. Grab it on Amazon or hit the link in the show notes. Just search for Conversations That Connect by Brooke Sellas or find it on bsquared.media. You mentioned this earlier, but I want to go back to something you said about, no, I'm just going to say customer experience. Member experience is everyone's job. And you said
Mhm.
it starts with the CEO down. And we know that social care touches marketing, sure, but it's also touching service, it's touching compliance, it's touching HR. It really touches all departments in many
Mhm.
ways. How do you work to align those internal teams and show them what the stakes are to help get everybody to have that CX is everyone's job or member experience is everyone's job mentality?
There's many different methods of internal communication across the organization. So we call them our centralized communication channels. So whether that's an all hands meeting, which, we do virtually and in person. Then we have another meeting that's called a table talk, and a table talk is just with our executive leadership team presenting to all employees. We have our intranet, and then we have a weekly digital newsletter. Think about those as being centralized communication channels. And then, of course, staff meetings and things like that. There isn't a single communication channel that does not include some form of discussion about member experience. It's top of mind in every conversation. We always mention that it is not about the number. So in our
Mm,
organization, at BCU, we measure member experience using Net Promoter Score.
sure.
But it's not about the score. It's not about the number. The number is the measurement, of course, but it's all about the experience. And so in order to drive that point home, we tell stories. We talk about the story. We don't tell all the good ones. We, you used churn
Yeah.
moments before, we talk about the difficult stories too, because we want people to know that progress over perfection
Yeah.
is so important as well. Sometimes we lose a member. Sometimes we're able to recapture. Sometimes, we're able to win someone over. Sometimes we get it right 100% of the time and everything in between. So we're able to certainly tell a story, and that, everything is about everyone emotions. And a
Yeah.
story is how we can deliver on the importance of member experience in each one of those. I will say that there are times when member experience becomes more important than others. And in those situations, it's usually when we're concerned that, I don't want to say lost our way. It's when we're so focused on when we're talking about one KPI, and then we kind of catch ourselves and say, but don't forget about the experience, you
Yeah.
know, because you get into, especially in banking, it's all about business, 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 but don't forget about experience. And again, I'll come back to, our leadership team, our executive leadership team. I really admire their ability to keep everyone focused on member experience.
No, you're bringing up a point that I think is another very valid thing that we hear constantly, no matter the industry or the brand, because what you're talking about is where empathy meets process.
Hmm.
And that's hard,
Hmm.
right? Because you have these escalation protocols in place. You've got these tone of voice guidelines. You've got these metrics or net promoter score that you're trying to meet or beat or whatever it is, but you still have to have empathy in there at the end of the day to keep the experience
Yep.
alive for that member or that customer. And so empathy and process, it's like right brain, left brain, and we're trying to
Hmm.
get them to work together. And that's hard. So I think it's so valid that you brought that up. So if you're listening, you're hearing it straight from Jill. That is normal. This is a
Hmm.
normal thing to have. And it sounds like, Jill, your answer is if it comes from the top, if the importance of experience comes from the top, if there's leadership buy-in, it will work itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you putting it that way, because it's exactly what I'm saying. Especially right now and especially post COVID,
Mm.
there is so much emphasis on digital transformation, AI. It's as if business is driving efficiency. And don't get me wrong, the need is there. The need is there to drive efficiency, drive costs down, do as much as we can to automate more and more in the business. What message does that send to employees? If the business is driving automation and efficiency, if you're not careful, it sounds like you're saying that the experience, customer or member experience, is less important. The
Mm-hmm.
human aspect of it is being driven out. It's like, the cup of water. You're going to put this rock in the cup and then the water comes out, and
Yeah.
it's not as important. That's not it at all. And that's that balance that you described, Brooke. You can't lose sight of how important the empathy is. Your customer is still your customer. Your member is still your member, regardless of how much automation and efficiency you're driving through technology.
Yeah, I preach this all the time. We are doing automation and efficiency for automation and efficiency's sake. And if we don't, they're literally in the headlines right now. I can think of brands that are all doing this wrong: Workday, Salesforce, Duolingo, Claude, who's an AI brand, but right, they took automation and efficiency and putting out the next level of their AI so in front of everything else that now they have the AI trying to keep itself alive instead of allowing them to shut it down, leaving itself messages for future models. Like I mean, this is crazy stuff. It sounds like sci-fi, but it's really happening. And this is what happens when we
Mhm,
do ruthless efficiency, right?
mhm.
It should be ruthless empathy. instead of
Yes.
ruthless efficiency. And I think that's
Mhm.
where a lot of brands get themselves into trouble. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you 3 questions and we're just going to rapid fire through it before we wrap up.
Okay.
What is one customer experience or member experience myth you wish would die?
The customer is always right.
Oh, that's such a good answer. Okay, quick follow up. Why?
Because what we say at BCU is the member may not always be right, but the member is always the member.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. That's ruthless empathy, y'all. Okay, next question. Who does great social care outside of your industry?
I'm going to say United Airlines.
Great. Have you had an experience with them or just watching as
No,
a
I have. I have.
you
It's been
have?
great. Mhm.
Awesome. Finish this sentence. The future of brand trust is blank.
Not losing sight of human connection.
Ah, love it. Couldn't have said it better. I mean, I knew that I loved you, but this was such a great conversation. Y'all, Jill dropped some serious CX wisdom today. I hope it sparks you to rethink every brand, what you're doing with your customers or your members, and not seeing social as a marketing thing. If you want to learn more about Jill or the kind of conversational care that BCU is doing, Jill, where can they find you? Where can they find BCU? All of the good things.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. Please look me up on LinkedIn, Jill Sammons. Shoot me an email, jill.sammons@bcu.org, or look up BCU online, bcu.org.
Love it. We will have all of those links inside of the show notes. If you're listening and not watching, the show notes happen on YouTube. So click over to YouTube, find the Social Media CX podcast, find Jill's episode, and all of those links that she just mentioned will be listed down below inside of the show notes. Thank you all so much for joining us for another episode. And Jill, thanks for being a total CX rock star.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Social Media CX podcast. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to up their social care game.